Greetings, I'm Mike. This is another chapter in transition. This would essentially be chapter 2, which is about human biology. What are we dealing with here? Humans are in ways, we're a typical mammal. Warm-blooded, live birth, spine, hairy. A little less hairy than we might be. Desmond Morris said that was because when we stopped moving around and started living in one place, the fleas got to be a real problem, and so we lost some hair. We're different than other mammals in a lot of ways. We have the best vision in the animal kingdom. That doesn't exclude birds. We're bipedal. We really have a very highly developed walking system that's very efficient, and as you may have heard, a skinny person in good health can essentially outrun in the distance any animal on Earth. They have to carry all their weight on 4 legs. We don't use our sense of smell as much as most animals. I have some ideas on that, but and you know, reproductively, we're much more sight-oriented than sensory. Reproductively, we're unusual in that we have children all year long. Most species don't do that. Now, the big difference, and the one that changes things, is the long, difficult learning developmental period of human children, and that in turn has caused a more complicated society. Humans are sexually dimorphic, that is, they come in two sizes. The males are bigger than females, which is typical of mammals, and that's so males can fight to compete for females, and sometimes they'll have a harem like in horses or elephant seals where they can dominate a reproductive resource. But in the normal circumstances, only the females raise the young, the males don't. Humans, it's not that way. This long developmental period has made it so demanding that the male has to basically help the female. And so you have what, in biological terms, what we call monogamy, is that the male helps the female. It doesn't mean one male and one female, though that's often the case in humans, but it does mean that the male makes a substantial contribution to raising the children. It's just necessary. And this in turn has led to complicated societies and long family delineations and clans and such. Now, like I say, in ways we're typical mammals, in ways we're unusual mammals. We're better communicators than most, better tool users, but where it really gets different is society. How we have this complicated, very complicated society, even to the point of an economic system describing our resource strategy. Now, this would be pretty hard to describe, but I can rely on the work of C.D. Darlington, the great British geneticist, who described the evolution of man and society, is the name of his book on this topic. And I mean, this guy is brilliant, and after many years of a distinguished career in academia, he wrote a book describing how cultures had developed. Western culture in particular, it's typical in ways. And this may be a little dated, but it's essentially accurate because it describes how human society has developed over time. That there was 3 tribes came together and created the first civil society of Samaria. That might be and whatever, but they had the basic parts of a society: peasants, herders, craftsmen, scribes, builders, priests, and some warrior class. And it was run by the priests, who sort of laid out what would be built and when to plant. And this was a very innovative thing, a society where people could use their abilities together. Yet the different groups that came together did somewhat stay separate based upon religion and habit. And So this was the start of the city builders in the West, and they spread. Now, after a while, what happened was they were conquered by the Semites. This would be Sargon the Great. And this introduced a military ruling caste, replaced the priestly caste. And it added a new dynamic. And usually the ruling caste has been herders, whether goat herders, sheep herders, horse herders. They were more used to warfare because they had raided each other's herds for a long time. And so that's who became the military ruling class. These people spread and created cities around the Mediterranean and expanded where agriculture could exist. They got better crops and better farmers, better tools, better herds. And this went on for quite a while. Many famous civilizations you'd recognize the name of. But then came the Indo-Europeans, the Greeks, Dorians, Ionians, the Romans, possibly the Etruscans, so that's being questioned now. And they replaced that military ruling class. Maybe the start of anti-Semitism. I've wondered about that. But they then spread all around the Mediterranean, more people into Germania and Britain, and they in turn met the Celts of Western Europe. And there's not much of a written history of this, but if you have a strawberry complexion, you're descended from them. And they hybridized with them, and that was important because they provided an incredible dynamic. And actually, the dynamic they added led to science. It led to a lot of social development, even led to science. So the thing is social development in the time of the cities, and there haven't been many mutations in that period of time, but what happened was the genes mixed, and the descendants of the tribes had the abilities of both the parentals. Now, it took a lot of time and natural selection for these tribes to fit together perfectly, the genes to fit together, but the result was dynamic people that had a developing civilization, developing to what we have now. Now, the military ruling class, we see the last vestiges of it as the monarchy. This seems to be changing. Another peculiar thing that's come up lately is finding the religious edifices in Turkey. They found a very substantial religious complex, and it was thought that, well, you'd have villages, cities, nations, and religious edifices like that, but that actually occurred before there was any cities. That was built before there was any cities or even farming. And so this is changing the story of how civilization developed, but it doesn't change this part that I've discussed of how the tribes came together and created societies. So in any case, whoops, let's get this up here again. This is a pretty good description of society, and what's important about it is it talks about the diversity, the genetic diversity we have to work with. There was 4 primary tribes, and there's a lot more than that, because the castes, the different castes represented tribes, and these are occupational castes, and they did have genetic predispositions towards what they did. And so this shows you the genetic diversity you have to work with. Now multiply this by the fact that this also happened in Asia and India and Mesoamerica. In the Yellow River Valley, the Asian civilization started. In the Indus River Valley, you had the Indian culture. It's going to be the same thing, different tribes and different castes. Then it also was happening in Mesoamerica, but they had less crops and fewer herd animals to work with. Now, it might even have been happening in North America. It's almost looking, this is sort of speculative, but it's sort of looking like a meteor set that civilization back, which is very interesting as far as I'm concerned. But these are the raw materials that the human genes, genetic nature will be in the future. This a combination of these. You can see very nicely, this makes racism sort of silly. Even all of the tribes of Earth, from each continent is going to have important genetic potentials to offer in the future. So this is a basic little biology description of humans. The next section is genetics, to say the situation we're in now and how we can husband these genes represented by these societies and castes. Thank you very much.